You're exhausted, gaining weight, anxious, and your hair is thinning. But your doctor says your thyroid is fine because your TSH is normal. Friend, that is not the full story. And in today's video, I'm breaking down the exact labs that every woman over 40 should be asking for, plus how nutrition, stress, and even gut health play a role in thyroid function. So let's get into it. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Jessica, and I'm a functional nutritionist and wellness expert. And I love helping women over 40 understand their bodies, get to the root of stubborn symptoms, and finally feel like themselves again so that they can live a life with more energy, clarity, and confidence. Thyroid health is definitely a hot topic. However, I find that in order for us to truly understand our bodies, that we need to understand what's going on underneath it all and why certain issues like bloating, fatigue, weight gain, even if there's been no changes, hair loss, cold hands, cold feet, these gnawing symptoms are happening and understanding where they're coming from versus just slapping a label on it like low thyroid or Hashimoto's. So, in today's conversation, I'm actually going to pull up a presentation to help illustrate some areas that you need to know about if you are, in fact, struggling with your health and feel like you haven't been able to get the answers that you deserve. But first, I want to go over some staggering statistics. So, this is actually coming up from the American Thyroid Association. And I want you guys to understand how prevalent thyroid disease is or thyroid issues are. And unfortunately, most people aren't aware that it's actually happening. So, more than 12% of the US population will develop a thyroid condition in their lifetime. But, and the unsettling part is, um, women are 5 to 8 times more likely than men to have thyroid problems. And there's a reason for that. A lot of the studies are showing due to our hormonal shifts over our lifetime, puberty, pregnancy, perimenopause, menopause, these shifts are stressful on our bodies. And that's just what's going to happen in general. But then when you add in life, stress through nutrition, stress through life, children, childbearing years, aging parents, trauma. Then you add in environmental stress, toxin load, environmental exposures, right? These things add up. And then you throw hormones on top of it, and the fact that our hormones are ever changing, ever cycling, even month to month, that the theories out there are that this is why women tend to have not just more thyroid issues, but also more autoimmune conditions, because as estrogen fluctuates up and down, it can cause immune dysregulation, which leaves us, unfortunately, in front of the firing squad with a lot of these more chronic issues compared to men. And here's the other thing. So, an estimated of 20 million Americans have some form of thyroid disease, but up to 60%, more than half of those have zero clue about the condition that they have. Pretty incredible when you think about it, right? And so, this video, I'm not creating it to create fear for anybody. My goal in creating these videos is to give you the education that we should have gotten from our doctors, unfortunately. But that's neither here nor there because, unfortunately, the medical system, only profits when we become sick and continues to profit as we stay sick. They're definitely not trying to help us um, avoid illness. That's not to say there's no doctors out there that are practicing um, a little bit more preventative like. I know plenty of doctors that have went out of practice and decided to do a concierge-based medicine because they were tired of the system. So I'm sure there's plenty of doctors out there that are practicing better, but from the majority perspective, they don't profit unless, unfortunately, you are sick. So let me pull up my slide deck so that we can get into the lab markers. So unfortunately, when um, when our doctors are working with labs for us, they are generally only looking at TSH. And um, when that's happening, your TSH unfortunately doesn't tell the entire story. So let me pull up the full lab panel here. So checking TSH is like seeing a full gas tank, assuming your car will run fine without popping the hood, right? But you're potentially still having a lot of issues under the hood, right? Just because there's fuel doesn't mean that the engine's working. You need a full thyroid panel to see what's really going on. So these are the markers. There are a couple more, but these are the markers that really complete a full thyroid panel. TSH, total T3, T4 free, T3 free, reverse T3, and you have the two antibodies there, TPO antibodies and the TGAB antibodies. And the differences between those antibodies I'll get into. But first, you could just take a snapshot of this screenshot if you need to. The reason why we want to make sure that we are looking at the entire full panel here is because if you only look at TSH, kind of like what the analogy said, right? If you only look at TSH and it shows that it's in normal range, and here's the thing, there's a difference between normal range and optimized range. The ranges on our lab panels, unfortunately, are extremely wide. They include healthy and the sick population, and demographics play a role too. But normal, unfortunately, is not optimized. And what we're seeing is many of the panels out there, whether it's thyroid or lipid or metabolic panels, iron panels, a lot of these panels are outdated, meaning the ranges are outdated. We are all getting sicker, right, as a country, and our ranges are kind of moving with that. So the sickest of the healthiest is in the best shape, but the problem is the sickest of the healthiest is still not optimized. I personally am an extremely healthy human being, and my thyroid is trending towards not optimized. And I consider myself a biohacker. I consider myself an avid health junkie. I'm always looking at ways to feel better, to look better, to do better. And I know that I am on the upper echelon when it comes to the health space. So the fact that the knowledge that I have, the efforts that I put into my health, the routines and the protocols that I do on my own self, that the environments we're living in, the fact that we have the most stress we've ever had in our entire history of humankind, right? Our overall health is shifting. And so it's important to understand TSH could be in normal range, even though it's not optimal, could be in normal range, but things like your T4 and T3, which are your actual hormones that are from the thyroid, TSH is actually not produced by the thyroid stimulating hormone, stimulating the hormones. It's actually produced by the pituitary, which is at the base of the brainstem. But your thyroid, which is that butterfly organ right in the front of your neck, that is where the T4, T3 hormones are produced. And your TSH signals to your thyroid to produce those hormones. So if TSH is not in optimal range, it might be a normal range, but it's not an optimal range, that is going to cause issues with that feedback loop to say, produce more thyroid, the thyroid does what it needs to do, and then the loop comes back to either shut off the amount of TSH coming from the body or the pituitary or not. So you see, like, there's a chain reaction that happens here. So T4 is about 80% of the hormones that your thyroid produces, and the rest is T3. And so it's important to understand that T4 is non-usable, T3 is usable. And there's conversions that happen in the body to allow the body to move T4 into a T3 state. Reverse T3 is like if the body is under a lot of stress, it's going to funnel that T4 free into the reverse T3 bucket instead of the usable thyroid hormone, the T3 bucket. And then you have the TPO antibodies and the TGAB antibodies. And let me go over what those are specifically. So when we look at the antibodies, actually, let me go back one more time. It's important to understand too, in Western medicine, meaning the doctors that you likely have been going to, they usually will never test unless you push them antibody activity. And the reason for that is the way that they treat low thyroid, because hypothyroidism is way more popular than hyper. The way that they teach low thyroid, is the exact same way that they would treat somebody with an autoimmune thyroid condition. So they really don't care. And there are plenty of doctors out there that'll tell you there is nothing you can do about thyroid antibodies, which is complete bullshit, by the way. Okay. So it's important to understand the reason why we want to test all of this, not just the thyroid, TSH, total T3, T4, T3, reverse T3. You also want to test antibodies because there's two ways in which low thyroid, just for the purpose of this conversation, we'll talk about low instead of high. Low thyroid can present. The symptoms are very similar. Hair loss, weight gain around the middle, even if nothing's changed, hot, heat, or cold intolerance. I think I said hair loss already. Fatigue is a big one. Constipation is another big one. Those all symptom wise will look the same no matter which version of low thyroid you have. But the difference is if you have zero TPO antibodies, zero TGAB antibodies, meaning your body's not producing antibodies, but you have lower thyroid symptoms, then it's likely related to the health of the thyroid. Okay. Versus if you have antibodies, that's an immune system problem. Okay. The immune system, the body is attacking its own tissues. In this case, it's enzymes and proteins, and that's causing the lower thyroid, right? So it's important to understand the source. Is it the body? Is it the immune system? Or is it um, something else going on that's stressing the thyroid? So let's get into a little bit of the autoimmune thyroid, which obviously is also probably one of the most popular autoimmune conditions out there. Hashimoto's is um, a very popular diagnosis. Hashimoto's thyroiditis is just autoimmune thyroid. So I love this. You can't just treat elevated antibodies with a pill. So this is also something that I hear a lot. Is, what can I take? I wish it was that easy, right? You have to ask why the immune system is attacking the thyroid in the first place and address the root cause. And I'll talk a little bit about what could be causing an autoimmune thyroid. But first, let's talk a little bit about the differences between TPO and the TG antibody. Okay. So the TPO antibody is attacking the hormone making the process, and the TGAB is attacking the building blocks of the hormone. So I like the analogy of like a bakery. And this bakery is creating T3 and T4 hormone cakes. Okay. And so the TPO antibody is like having the oven broken, but you have all the ingredients ready. Okay. So the oven is broken or compromised. You can't actually bake your cake. Your cake is just, the cake is perfect. It's liquid, but it can't be baked because the oven's broken. That's like if the TPO antibodies are elevated versus the TGAB antibodies. What that is like is if the oven's fine, but the ingredients themselves are compromised. Maybe the flour is contaminated or the yeast is contaminated, right? So the TPO antibodies is the body attacking the enzyme versus the TGAB, it's the body attacking the proteins that create the actual thyroid hormones T3 and T4. So both help paint a clearer picture of autoimmune thyroid. Some people might have elevated TPO and zero TGAB. Some people might have both, or some people might have no TPO antibodies and just TGAB. So, if you do ever have TPO antibodies, it's good to always track to see where how the body is trending, right? This is why it's so important to understand the full picture because your TSH could be even in optimal range, but your antibodies could be elevated. And that is a very early sign that we need to support the body so that it doesn't eventually become an autoimmune thyroid problem where the thyroid tissue actually gets destroyed. So let me stop sharing for just a moment. And I want to chat a little bit about why um, why could potentially you could be leading down towards the autoimmune thyroid versus a just a hypothyroidism. So why could TPO or TGAB antibodies be elevated? Number one, leaky gut, probably the most popular one. And all this means is you have micro tears in the intestines that are causing or allowing toxins or undigested proteins from food, pathogens, right? Your digestive system, your skins, if you will, of the digestive tract are a huge line of defense for your body. Think about it. the air we breathe, the drinks we drink, the food we eat, everything's cluttered with bacteria. And your digestive system is so important in order to block that bacteria and save your body from harm. However, over time, those defenses get worn down, and this could be a 5 hour video, but I'm gonna do my best to keep it under 30 minutes. So leaky gut is one of them. That just means micro tears in the intestinal lining. And yes, you can reverse leaky gut. Okay. Chronic infections, so viral infections like Epstein-Barr, H. pylori infection. So if you have history of EBV, Epstein-Barr, or you had mono, right, and you knew that you eventually would have EBV in your system, if you've had infections of H. pylori, if you've had a history of food poisoning, right, you got to remember bioindividuality is important. This is when I'm working with clients one-on-one, I take a full health history intake when I see these maybe like repeated food poisoning instances, right? Those are all clues that maybe this person, we need to dig a little deeper and do some GI testing. But these types of infections can provoke autoimmune responses due to sometimes molecular mimicry, meaning your body is attacking the bacteria. And it's also mistaking your thyroid as a problem and attacking that. It could also cause and lead to leaky gut. Nutrient deficiencies is a big one. I would say this is probably more popular. Things like low vitamin D, low zinc. We'll get into some of this in later slide. Toxin exposure. Okay. That could be the air we breathe. That could be, you know, perfume. That could be secondhand smoking. Um, just any like environmental toxins that can dysregulate the immune function and stress the thyroid. Hormonal imbalances, we talked a little bit about this early on, like low estrogen, low progesterone, overproduction of testosterone. Like your hormones being in balance is very important for the body, right? Every system works synergistically. So if one system is out of whack, and that could be from years of birth control. It doesn't have to necessarily be because you're going into perimenopause or menopause. But hormonal imbalances are definitely something we want to look at that can exacerbate the immune system dysregulation. Gluten sensitivity or celiac disease, big one. Celiac disease in and of itself is an autoimmune condition, which can cause other autoimmune conditions because once the immune system is hypervigilant, like I said, it can cause other issues with the immune system, leading to unfortunately, other autoimmune conditions. Excuse me, stress, physical or emotional. And then, of course, there's genetics. I don't like to hang my hat, though, on genetics because it feels like such a fate when it's not. Genes are not your destiny. Environment and lifestyle play, in my opinion, and in many others out there, and a lot of research to back this up. Environment and lifestyle play the more major role to be paying attention to. Okay, let's get back to sharing. Perfection. Okay, here we go. No, that's not what I wanted. Try this again. Perfect. Okay. So let's keep moving on. So nutritional triggers. Why could your thyroid be having some trouble? Um, Supportive nutrients. So when we have a lack of the supportive nutrients, iodine, selenium, zinc, iron, vitamin D, B vitamins, omega-3 fatty acids, tyrosine, it's very important to understand that all of these nutrients play a role, not just for the thyroid, but synergistically throughout the body, right? So, for instance, vitamin D is a popular one, and iron. Um, Iron, particularly, we'll say iron and zinc, these two play a major role in allowing the thyroid to convert the T4 to T3. So, not to overwhelm you, but again, this is how my mind thinks. I'm always looking at why. So let's say that this is not an autoimmune condition for you. Let's say that this is a thyroid condition. You got to ask yourself why. So if it's not necessarily like an infection that's causing stress on the body, let's say it's a lack of a nutrient. If you have a history of anemia, or maybe you have heavy periods, um, or maybe you had a procedure, like for me, I went through a fibroid embolization recently, And when I recently did my lab work, I noticed that my ferritin, which is my stored iron, was no, I'm a liar. My iron was lower, my ferritin was higher because of inflammation from having the procedure. But my usable iron was lower than typically where I sit, right? Which is going to stress the thyroid in general, because if my trend was pretty stable and it dips, even though it's still in normal range, it's not optimal for me. So we can't just assume, oh, it's a thyroid issue, take some selenium, which is what a lot of people do, or take some iodine, which is what I hear a lot. It's like, oh, you have low thyroid, take iodine, or take desiccated thyroid. Um, you got to ask, are there other things going on in the body? And to complicate things even further, because this is what I love doing, let's say you do have low iron, but you're eating all kinds of red meat. It's likely a digestive system at that point. Your body's not breaking down the food that you're eating. And so anytime I'm working with a woman in my practice, we always run through my pillars, my root cause pillars. Digestion and detox are one of those. Okay. And I make sure we go through one by one to make sure we are not leaving any stone unturned, especially in the case of a thyroid dysfunction. And then you have disrupted food patterns, right? Gluten, dairy for some, I won't say for all, but for some, low protein diets or low calorie diets, even if it's unintentional. Maybe you're a mom working in corporate America and you just don't have the time to eat. That's an issue. If you're not prioritizing getting your protein in or getting in your needed calories, that's going to be a problem. It's going to stress the body. Okay. And then soy excess can be a trigger. Okay. Too much soy can be a trigger. Now let's go into lifestyle triggers. So those supportive habits that are going to be good for the body, good for the thyroid, stress management, consistent and quality sleep, like that should be at the top, honestly. Regular movement, gentle movement. Again, you want to make sure that you're moving the body. You're getting the lymph system going. The lymph system is part of the immune system and it's passive. Unlike the cardio system where you have your heart, which is a muscle pumping blood, your lymph system has no muscle to pump the fluid. So you have to move the body. Okay, so regular movement is so critical to remove waste products from the body, which could ultimately stress the thyroid if you have too much waste going on. Blood sugar balance, huge. This is one of my main pillars in my practice. We always look at blood sugar balance and insulin regulation as a pillar. You cannot pass go without this in my practice. Reducing toxin exposure, supporting your overall gut health, again, cannot pass go. Making sure your digestive health, your gut health, your microbiome are all areas that we have reviewed and made sure that your body is optimized in those areas. And then harmful habits. There's more than just these, but I would say these are the top ones. So skipping meals, fasting too often. I said too often. So a lot of people say, oh, you can't fast. No, it just depends on where you are in your life. If you have dysregulated cortisol, if you have blood sugar imbalances, you might not want to go with the latest fad of fasting depending on where you are in your cycle, depending on your fatigue and or energy levels, right? There's a lot of bioindividuality that needs to be considered when considering these fad approaches to weight loss or blood sugar regulation. There's good ways of implementing and not so great ways of implementing these habits. Excessive blue light exposure or not enough natural sunlight. So the circadian rhythm, the light in which how you live your life in light, whether it's outdoor light, indoor lighting, um, this can affect your hormone production in general and can put stress on the thyroid. Overexercising or focusing only on high intensity interval training or high intensity training in general. Again, it's all synergistic. Okay. Are we giving the body enough modulation in the inflammatory practices? Weight or exercise is great. It does increase inflammation in the body for a short term. It's usually good inflammation, but too much of a good thing, you get it. Chronic toxin exposure is another one, and we talked a little bit about that already. Okay, common symptoms for women to ignore, and then we'll wrap up. So I would say we are in a time where a lot of people think it's normal to be tired. It's normal to be gaining weight, especially over 40, especially in the midsection. This is normal. All my girlfriends are having this problem. I guess this is just something I have to live with. Wrong, not true. Cold hands and feet, anxiety or irritability. Again, like if you have always been an anxious girl, or maybe always been irritable, or maybe irritable more around your period, um, that could be a sign of thyroid condition, but more so I'm talking about like increasing anxiety or new irritability. Burning mouth and tongue. I've had a lot of clients with the burning mouth or burning tongue syndrome, especially my Hashimoto clients that know they have Hashis. Hair thinning or loss. Okay, constipation is a big one. Any type of, even if it's bloating, any type of digestive irregularity, especially if you were always a regular girl. And then irregular periods or worsening PMS. Your thyroid is your master thermostat. It literally controls absolutely everything. It controls metabolism, growth, repair, recovery. And so inflammation, which is basically anything that's going to cause stress to the body at this point, is going to cause non-optimal levels of thyroid. And so it's important to understand that we should not ignore these symptoms. We should not commonize these symptoms. We should push for more information. We should push for more answers. And so that brings me to just my final point when it comes to your thyroid health. Um, like I said, especially over 40, I actually have never worked with a woman that came into my practice and did not have a an optimized thyroid. Did not have. Um, I have yet to find a woman that had an optimized thyroid when they came into my practice. And so it's important to understand that there are ways to connect the dots and make sure that you have a full picture of what's going on in the thyroid, but to also not again, I don't want to give too much information where you're like spinning. Hopefully this was just enough for you to have the education of your body. But I also want to make sure you're always thinking zoomed out, because the thyroid definitely, I wouldn't say could be a root cause, but the health of the thyroid could be a root cause, but likely the health of the thyroid, because hormones are just reacting to really the root issues out there. It's important to zoom out too. Yes, we want to get a full thyroid panel. We want to make sure we're looking at our health from total and not just our health on paper. Markers are great, but who you are and how you got to where you are today is really the most important part of the story. Your life, your health history, you as a human being, who you feel you are in this world, all of those facets, the mind and the body really is what we need in this um, on this planet to have true vitality. And this is something that I help the women in my practice piece together. Okay. So if you are struggling in this area, right? If you are unsure if maybe the thyroid is your problem, if what we talked about today hits home and you want to stop guessing and finally get real answers, I do have a free resource for you. Down in the show notes below is an essential lab guide. In that lab guide, I do go through a ton of markers, not just thyroid, but the full thyroid panel is in there and the optimal ranges. Okay. These are functional ranges. These are the ranges that are going to help you feel your best. So you can download that and you can take that information to your doctor and say, I want these tests run. If that's not an option for you, maybe you don't have a doctor or you don't want to go back to your doctor or you've exhausted that route and you're like, no, it's never going to happen. I can help you run those tests as well. Just reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram at BeBodyEmpowered, and you can also send me an email. The link is in the show notes below, again, to contact me. You can leave a comment below if you have any questions on this video. But at the end of the day, I also support women in understanding their labs, their entire comprehensive lab panel, and pairing that with their unique health history, their unique health story. And by doing that, we create a full blueprint to nutrition, to lifestyle habits, to even supplemental recommendations if necessary. And help them get back to vitality, help them get back to confidence, clarity, feeling really good in their body and at peace. Because let's be real, it's not fun to always be focused on your health and your body. And, you can't put your body up on a shelf and not think about it, right? We are attached to these things and we want to feel good. And we want to be able to focus on our kids, our career, on our hobbies. And when our health is in the way, that's a big opportunity that we are missing because it's obviously affecting our lives in a way that we're not living our fullest. I hope this video was helpful for you. If it was, please give it a like. Make sure you're giving it a like. Subscribe to the channel. Send this video to a friend if you think it could help them. And again, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the comments below. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.